Let's get started. And whatever centering posture you like, for this particular sequence that is pre-wrote out for me, the beginning pose is Sukhasana, easy pose. So that's cross-legged. You can use that pose, or if you really like Balasana, child's pose, or whatever other pose that you like to center in. So taking a few moments, getting all settled in. I personally like Virasana, hero pose, so I'm gonna pop into that one. And then taking your first few moments to get all settled in, and especially feeling grounded today. So with our core practice, it's nice to connect with earth and feel the strength of earth and even just visualize it. It might sound a bit hooey, but I like to actually, it does two things. One, it brings you into the present moment. Like feel your mat beneath you and then visualize the floor beneath your mat and then the foundation of your home or wherever you are beneath that, and then the ground, the earth's crust beneath that. And then I just keep going. So it's sort of like a meditation as well. And while I do that, especially when I know I have a core practice coming up, which can be as gentle as you want it to be, but still, in order to engage our core, it's our center, right? That's where we gather our inner strength as well. And so connecting to even really thinking about the earth's composition, the tectonic plates, and how much power and strength is in the earth. And then if you want to go another step further, visualizing your center, so your core, and almost like a silver cord that connects you to earth, as if you were a battery being charged. That's what I do in my centering before a nice core practice, and it's, if nothing else, very entertaining and visual. So just taking a moment, connecting with whatever strength means for you. And then taking a few slow, deep breaths through the nose. So getting lots of oxygen to those muscles before we get going. Slow, deep inhales. And even taking an extra little sip of air at the top. And on every exhale, at the bottom, squeezing out that last puff of air, making room for the next inhale. And after your last exhale is complete, just return the breathing to normal, wherever you're at. After the end of that round, just soften the breathing. And then slowly make your way through hands and knees, from whatever centering posture you're in, taking a moment here, and then we'll head straight up and back to a downward facing dog. So tucking the toes under, feels nice, especially after a Virasana pose, hero's pose, or Balasana, child's pose, being able to straighten out through the legs, maybe walking it out just a little bit. And just a couple deep breaths here. And then while we're in downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana, thinking about the core. So one could just pull the belly in, but when we're upside down, see if you can feel that sort of vacuum feeling. Because we're inverted, if you relax the tummy, you can almost feel like the belly goes concave a little bit. So allow that sort of vacuuming feeling, that sensation, and allow
all of the internal organs, everything, kind of shift upward a little bit in the body. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's okay too. Just scooping the belly in and up. From here, gently lower through hands and knees and pause here. So we've got a little bit of core, which often means there'll be a plank or two. And in that case, I like to warm up the wrists. So let's just do a little rocking motion side to side on hands and knees. A little shifting, sort of getting the wrists warmed up a little bit. And the hands too. Just shifting the weight back and forth. And being mindful as we do so. So actually feel the sensation of more weight shifting from the thumb side of the hand to the pinky side of the hand and back again. Feel what's happening in the wrists, in the fingers. And then from here, we'll do a few circles. So I'm not even going to explain this one. Just going in a circle in one direction. But while you're doing so, you might feel that little extra stretch of the wrist as the shoulders move forward of the wrists and the shoulders move back of the wrists. So we're going in one direction. Doesn't really matter how quickly. You might want to go nice and slow if you're not feeling very warm this morning. And then we'll switch directions. I like to go a little bit slower as I pass forward for that stretch. So again, it's just a gentle stretch. We don't have to make very big circles. Just getting a little bit of warmth into the hands and wrists. And centering it up. One more time, heading up and back to downward facing dog. Feeling that stretch in the backs of the legs. And then let's send the feet forward all the way to the top of your mat, landing in a forward fold. So feeling that nice length in the backs of the legs here again. Couple deep breaths. Softening through the neck. And then ragdoll all the way up, one vertebra at a time, all the way up to standing into Tadasana, mountain pose at the top of our mats. So this is a non-Vinyasa class today, but we'll do just a little bit of a warming up, kind of like a modified sun salutation. So not full sun salutation, just for something different, something fun. So scooping the belly in, thinking core. So when we have a theme for the class, it's nice to specifically think about that in every movement that we do in the class that leads up to it. So not that we don't think about core when we're just standing here, but a little extra emphasis. So pelvic floor pulls up, belly scoops in and up, just a little bit more emphasis or thought, maybe is the right word. More energy towards the core, standing up nice and tall. And here we go. On an inhale, we'll raise the arms up and then pausing there. So whatever your arms are this morning, if you want to step the arms apart, shoulders down, feel free. If you want to, I like to do a little stretch here where I interlace the fingers and then straighten through the arms, feeling a nice shoulder stretch. Trying to keep the ribs down a little bit. And I like to draw the arms back. So I like to use this opportunity to feel a little bit of openness in the shoulders. And then one more inhale to lengthen. On the exhale, we'll forward fold. So nice and slow and smooth. All the way down to a forward fold. Pausing here. Feeling a nice stretch. On an inhale, looking up to the horizon for flat back. And exhale, we'll fold forward. From here, we'll step right back to down dog. So stepping it back. So we skip that whole vinyasa part and feel that length in the backs of the legs once again. And then we'll gently lower through hands and knees and then all the way to seated. And then from here, I'd like to do a little bit of neck and shoulder opening. And I'll explain why that pertains to core, or how that pertains to core in a moment here. So for our neck, we'll do some head rolls or head circles. So tilting right ear towards right shoulder, and then the chin moves downward, over to the left, and around. Number 2, so nice and slow. Some of us have a little bit of a tighter neck, so if that's you, being really super cautious. And then just one more, so number 3. And then float the head to neutral, and then we'll go the other direction. So left ear to left shoulder, tucking the chin, over to the right, and around. Number 2. Number 3. And then floating the head to neutral. From here, my favorite stretch, we'll interlace the fingers behind the back. So just because you can't see my hands, I'll show you in front of me here. So fingers go like so, and then behind us, and then, straightening through the elbows as much as they'll let you. Maybe that's a lot, maybe it's a little, doesn't matter, a couple deep breaths. So I like to do some stretching on the shoulders and neck before we do core, because with plank, it's sometimes we tend to put more of the tension into the shoulders. So we want to make sure that's nice and open first, so that the tension's the wrong word, but the energy and the focus goes to the core instead of the shoulders. And release. Speaking of which, let's head up to a plank. So from here, you can make this practice as gentle or as strong as you want. So our first exercise, not gonna lie, it's really strong. But what we do is you just do less if you want more gentle or slower. And if you want more, you can maybe speed it up or lengthen the time in the strong points, and I'll explain what those are. So we want to start in from hands and knees, lengthen the stance to a modified plank. And then if this is enough, just hold here in a plank, in a modified plank. Thinking of the pelvic floor pulling up, so Mula Bandha, and then belly scooping in and up, Uddiyana Bandha. And then if you want to go further, we tuck the toes under and then lift the knees until you're in a full plank. So we've just loosened up the neck, so shoulders away from the ears, even though we're sideways. And then keep the focus on the core, not on the arms. Belly scoops in, gently lower your knees to the mat. If you want extra challenge this morning, I don't, but you might, don't lower the knees all the way. And then repeat. So we'll just do a few rounds of this at your own pace. So we straighten through the legs, lengthening through the spine, and then gently lower the knees. Maybe you're like, that's enough for me, I need a break. And then you hang out here for a bit. Or maybe you haven't lowered the knees yet, all the way to the floor, and keep going. While you're doing this super duper fun exercise this morning, thinking of the core. So again, pelvic floor pulling up. So pelvic floor is part of your core. And then belly scooping in and up. The arms are going to try to take over this exercise. Don't let them. Core strength. And then what winds up happening is the legs are lifting themselves up. So your shoulders and arms don't have to do that. Your hips lift themselves up through your core strength. So your shoulders don't have to take care of that either. Almost done. Last few moments. And then from hands and knees, heading all the way back to a child's pose, relaxing. And we'll hang out here for
for 10.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Slowly coming up through hands and knees, and then we'll lower all the way onto our bellies, preparing for Bhujangasana Cobra. So just a nice stretch. So we'll lower all the way down to our bellies. And then behind us, the legs are straight, toes are pointed. And then even though we're bending backwards, we want to scoop the belly in, lifting the shoulders up. So let's do just like a no hands situation at first. Warm up the back just a little bit. Holding for 2, 3, 4, and 5. Relaxing, maybe forehead to the forearms. And then from here, we'll head into Bhujangasana unless Sphinx pose is enough, Naravirālasana, in which case stay here if you want a little bit more of a stretch. Lifting up, so gently pressing into the hands. And we can change the intensity of the stretch by where the hands are placed. So the more forward the hands are, the less intensity of the stretch. And the further or the closer the hands are to your hips, the more intense the stretch. So just holding here and sinking and melting the heart forwards. And Bhujangasana Cobra pose is part of our core practice because our core is our whole center, including the back side of our body too. So you don't want to just have strong abs and then have a weak back. We want that muscular balance. So taking our whole core, the whole center of our being, and adding a little bit of mobility and strength. And then slowly lowering. So every time I lower from Cobra, I try to do this. So a little bit at a time, we lower. But think of the back muscles as trying to not let go. So that eventually you're just like, no hands, and the back's like, no, I want to stay in Cobra. That kind of a feeling as you lower. It's a little bit of resistance as you lower Cobra. And then from here, we will press up and back to child's pose or downward dog if you prefer. I'm going to grab a child's pose here. Either one will lengthen through the spine. Releasing all those muscles after our nice back bend. So we're just here for a few moments, not too long. And then from here, let's make our way up to hands and knees. And then the next pose we have up today is Shishulasana dolphin pose, which, not gonna lie, technically we use our core with everything, but mostly this is shoulders and back. So we're just popping that in there for fun. It's just your lucky day, even though it's a core strengthening class. So let's bring the hands, just like in Naravirālasana Sphinx pose. The arms are parallel. There are modifications where you can have the hands in and the elbows out, but Shishulasana, this pose, we don't do that, and it's harder. And it's good for us. So try to keep the wrists parallel. And I say the wrists, not the hands, because it's funny because in class, people will start to do this, the body wants to, and the elbows will go out, and they'll say, keep the hands apart. And then I see people kind of going like this, and it's like, well, that's not quite what I mean. So I think try to keep the wrists out. And then once the arms are parallel, elbows beneath the shoulders, we'll tuck the toes under and then hips press up and back. So this is a very powerful pose. And then from here, you can try to elongate the backs of the legs and allow the heels to move down towards the floor. But really what we're trying to do in this pose, this is a prep pose for forearm stand, Pincha Mayurasana. So what we're doing here is we're trying to not let the shoulders move forward of the elbows, but keep them straight up over the elbows. And then if this isn't really stretching or doing too much, you can start to walk the toes inward. And then hold, hold, hold. That's enough of that. Let's gently lower all the way to a child's pose. Relaxing through the shoulders and the neck. Few deep breaths. And then from here, another core strengthener. So from here, there's two options. We'll head back to plank or modified plank. So I'll just start a modified plank. And what this next exercise is a nose to knee strengthening in plank. So if you're in modified plank, you can stay in modified plank and we'll just alternate one at a time. If you want to go for the full variation, go ahead. Tuck the toes under, hips press up. So long spine, here we go. Either way, belly scoops in, nose to knee, and then with some resistance, bring it back at your own pace. So thinking of, with each movement, the pelvic floor pulling up and the belly scooping in and up. So again, at your own pace, but really trying to make it more about the core than about anything else. We're also working the psoas muscle, so that muscle that hikes the knee up towards the chest and then pull the toes up as well, as far away from the mat as you can. We won't do too many rounds of this. I'm not trying to get you in like a gut-busting yoga practice. just strengthening the core a little bit. And then wherever you're at, lowering the knees if not already, and then child's pose once again. We'll hold for 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. And 1. We'll slowly come on up, back again through hands and knees. And the next pose up is Vashisthasana side plank pose. So for this one, let's do the left leg on top first. So I'm going to demonstrate the modified variation where I keep my right knee on the floor and then my left leg opens up and I can raise my left arm high to the sky. Okay, so that option is definitely there for you. If you want to go for the full variation, we tuck the toes under in a full plank and then we roll over onto the right outside edge of the foot. Arm goes alongside the body and then straight up to the sky. We hold for 5. Keeping the hips lifted for 4, 3, 2, and 1. We reverse course. And then we take a little break in between. Unless you don't want to, you don't have to. You can keep holding plank. I'm going to take a little rest in between. And then when you're ready, we prepare for the other side. So either keep that left knee down onto the ground or full plank and then rolling over onto the outside edge of the left foot. Arm goes alongside the body before it goes straight up to the sky for 5. Remember, it's about the core. 4. So pelvic floor lifts up. 3, 2, and 1. Arm goes back alongside the body, and then we return to plank, gently lower, and then find a resting pose. Maybe that's a full child's pose. Maybe it's thunderbolt pose. Just a few moments to relax the wrists after all that. I think that's the last arm balancing we have for the day. But it gives you lots of nice strength in the wrists. And I love planks because they help us build bone density, right? To avoid osteoporosis. We want those bones to be nice and dense and strong. And we do that by weight bearing. All right. From here, we head into Dandasana staff pose. You can come to seated and then bring the feet forward. And then we lie all the way back, preparing for yogic bicycles, Dvichakravartanasana. And the thing with this one is that it's a pretty strong core strengthener. So if you're a student or if you're a teacher, it's not the best when we lie back and do any kind of crunching. There's a couple situations where it's not really appropriate. So if we have a fairly large belly, or if you've been pregnant before and there might be a little bit of a separation of the abdominal muscles. And so when we lie back, if that pertains to you or your students at all, we can keep the whole entire torso on the floor and the head as well. It relieves a bit of pressure here, okay? And then if you're like, nope, that's not me, or I'm fine, I'm good, then from here, we bend the knees in, and then we tuck the chin in and fingertips behind the head, but not like clasping onto the back of the head for dear life, more like just fingertips. That's the idea. From here, this will take all my explaining skills. So we core first, so belly pulls in, and then we extend the right leg parallel to the floor, and the right elbow reaches towards the left knee. Maybe there's contact, maybe there's not, doesn't matter. And then we bring everything back to center. So right knee moves back in towards the left, and then other side. So we extend the left leg parallel to the floor, left elbow towards the right knee, and then back to center. Once you get the hang of what you're doing, we exhale in the extension, we inhale back to center, and you keep going at your own pace. So the modified variation is the same thing, but we pull the belly in. This might even be too much. If you're noticing there's a lot of pressure, outward pressure on the belly, then there's another way to modify this. So continue on if you're happy. And then if you're like, no, I need a little bit something else, then we place the feet on the floor and do the exact same thing. We'll extend, so first core, and then extend the right leg parallel to the floor. Belly pulls in to initiate that movement back. Other side, so extend the left leg parallel to the floor, using the belly, using the core, and bringing it back. Last few moments, I'll just do one more round in this. I like this modified version, actually. I'm gonna keep going with this one. And then bringing it back. So I'm thinking pelvic floor as well. So this is still working. If you're doing this modified variation properly, this is a good core strengthener. And back. Relaxing. Feet on the floor. Let the belly soften. And then from here, let's come on up. So you can either just do like a rock and roll up, or nicer and gentler is roll over onto the right side, pause for a moment, and then slowly come on up. And then we prepare for Paripurna boat pose. Oh, this one's tough for Carla, but it's so good for us. Luckily, there's so many modifications that we can do. So boat pose, we start seated with the knees bent, feet on the floor, and we lift up nice and tall. So I like to clasp onto my knees first because I tend to slouch. So lifting up tall, thinking of the chest lifting. So the whole time, it's like there's a string on the sternum or the heart, lifting it upwards. Then we actually lean back just a little bit, not too much, but just enough till you can maybe find that balance. And you can pause there. So you're trying, this gets a little tricky, but don't worry about it too much. You're trying to not have the tailbone on the floor, but you do have your sit bones on the floor. So if you're like, I can't figure that out, that's okay. Like short of knowing how to levitate, it's challenging. So from here, you can clasp one of the backs of the legs. That's helpful. Just trying to find that balance is enough. And I can feel my psoas muscles working, my hip flexors, the part that lifts the knees up. Maybe straightening through the legs a little bit. If you can straighten the legs all the way, arms along your sides, parallel to the floor, and just straightening as much as you want to. And then at the same time, I can feel myself slouching. Lift the heart up, holding, holding, holding for 4 and 5. We'll relax in a cross-legged position. And I love the feeling in a cross-legged position right after boat pose because you can sort of feel the hip flexors relaxing. All right. From here, we want to flip over onto our bellies. Make it sound like we're doing gymnastics here, but just, through hands and knees and then lowering down. The next pose is either Bhujangasana Cobra again, or if you wanted to give upward dog a try, we can do that. So the only difference, first of all, if you know what upward dog is and you want to go ahead and pop into that, feel free. And then for a brief tutorial, the only difference between Cobra and upward dog is, so I'm in Cobra here, and then the only difference is that instead of having my ribs and my belly and my pelvis on the floor, everything lifts up except for the tops of the feet. So the shoelaces part of my feet stay on the floor, and then my hands stay on the floor, and I straighten through the arms, and I lift the heart up to the sky. So my thighs are not on the floor, my knees are not on the floor, and I'm lifting. Breathing deep. So if you try that and you're like, and nothing lifted, that's okay. You can actually even just keep trying and use that strength of pushing the floor away. And eventually one fine day, you'll lift up off the floor. And to come out, we reverse through Cobra. And again, I like to do that little resistance of the back is like, no, but I love back bends. And from there, we'll head up and back to child's pose. So strong arms, though, take every opportunity to use that core strength. Belly pulls in, belly comes off the floor first, and then up and back to child's pose. Just for a moment to feel that length in the spine. And then come on up to seated. Oh, that felt nice, that little child's pose. I could have just had a little snooze there. So we come on up all the way to seated and prepare for Ardha Matsyendrasana, half Lord of the Fishes pose. So this one's a really nice stretch that goes really nicely after the feeling of the strength that we got in our core, the psoas muscles. There's a lot of core muscles. So for this one, we're going to be getting some stretch in the hips. So this one it's known as a twist, but it's also a hip stretch. So it's a combination. Let's break it down. So bending the knees, feet on the floor, and then take your left leg underneath the right, and the right foot will land somewhere near the left foot near the right hip. I don't know what I said, but left foot, right hip. And instead of just plopping the foot down, we want that left knee or the bottom knee to be square facing forward. So this is where we get a bit of a stretch. Okay, so this bottom leg is externally rotating. And then the top foot goes over top so that the outside of the right foot is right near the outside of the left knee. And sometimes I'm like, which one's my left one now that I'm in a knot? But you might find that that increases the stretch on the left leg as well. So if that's the case and it's a bit too much, lifting up on a folded blanket or a block, and then lifting up nice and tall. We're not done yet, there's a twist. So we lift up tall, and then we try to get the twist in our spine to be mostly in the mid-back. So you wanna think about like wringing out a cloth. You know how the middle part is more twisted than either end? So in a spinal twist, we have the low back, the mid-back, upper back, and neck. So the low back and neck, we don't want to focus on too much. We want to have less of a twist there and more in the mid-back, okay? So lifting up tall, you can hug that top knee and then right fingertips behind you, opening up. Or if you have extra mobility, you can cross the arm right over. And it is okay to use a little bit of leverage, but just be a little bit cautious with that, of course. So what we don't want to do is hunch, because you can see I'll overstretch. And I've had that happen before where I wasn't doing the right thing. I wasn't lifting up tall enough, and I did sort of overstretch here. So we don't want to do that. We want to lift up tall, almost feel like a cobra, seriously, and then that'll make you more straight. I like to think of my heart lifting with that little bit of cobra essence in the pose, and then cross the arm over, and then opening up the right shoulder. So that's the other thing I like to think. Instead of thinking I'm twisting my spine, I think I'm opening up the right shoulder, and then breathing deep. This is another pose where I like to do just one more quick cue. I'm trying not to overcomplicate this, but you know me, I like to talk about yoga a lot. So the crown of the head, if you feel like you're pressing an imaginary button on the ceiling, that will make the lifting up a lot easier. There's something about that visual that helps us. And to come out, let's inhale one last time. And on the exhale, unraveling and unwinding, and return to Dandasana staff pose. So I like to take a moment just to check in with the body and feel lopsided. I really like doing that between each pose in yoga, because I definitely feel my spine wants to twist this way. And that lets me know, yeah, I did well. I did some stretching and got some stuff accomplished in that first side. So let's even it out. Bending the knees. This time the right foot goes underneath the left, like a little bridge. And then, oh, I can feel that stretch already. Not sure what I did yesterday, feeling a little tight. And then left foot crosses over, and then I'm slouching because my hips feel that stretch, but lifting up nice and tall. If it's too much, of course, lifting up onto a folded blanket. Lifting up tall, and then adding the twist. So mid-back more so than the low back or the neck. So the left fingertips behind, the right arm crosses over, or hugs, right? We can do that as well. And thinking of opening up the left shoulder more than anything else happening. The mid-back, really feeling the mid-back. So I am looking over the left shoulder, but not craning my neck. And then that final little alignment check is the top of the head, lifting up, pressing an imaginary button on the ceiling. One more deep inhale here. And unraveling, unwinding, and returning to Dandasana staff pose. And from here, we're on a nice smooth trajectory all the way to Shavasana from here. It's all nice from here. So we'll lay all the way back and prepare for Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. If you want to make this pose really gentle this morning, which I think I want to, you can grab a block, or you can do the active variation. Okay, so we'll lay all the way back. And for either variation, we bend the knees with the feet on the floor, and we want the feet just slightly on the outsides of the hips. So just a teensy bit wider than the hips, but the feet are parallel. Knees pointing straight up, arms along the sides, palms facing down, and then looking straight up to the ceiling. And then we lift the hips way up, and then I'll show you both variations. So for the active variation, you can interlace the fingers and tuck the shoulders under, lifting the hips high to the sky. Or if you're like, I want to be gentle, you can place the block beneath the hips. There's 3 different heights of the block. And so I don't recommend the tallest one because that's very awkward. I recommend the lowest setting, actually. You could, this one's a little trickier though, you can set it up to the second setting, and it's just sort of a trial and error to perfectly balance it's like the sit bones area, or the back side of the sit bones, so you don't have to hold on. It's a little bit of a process, but it does give you a nicer stretch. So wherever you're at, trying to find lots of space between yourself and the floor.
And to come out in any variation, either variation, we lift the hips just a little bit higher. And then if you've got a block, you can remove the block. And then we lower all the way down. And I like to hug the knees in for Apanasana after that one for a nice release of the spine. And if you were doing the passive version of that one, sometimes it's nice to hang out there a little longer. But for this class, we'll just do what little we did, but it's still really beneficial. And then from here, we'll head into Ananda Balasana, Happy Baby. So this is a really good one to release the spine. So what we do is we clasp onto the outer edges of the feet, or if you can't reach, finding them to whatever you can. So shins or ankles. And then situating the feet so they're facing the sky. And gently drawing the knees downward. So it's not a really strong pull down of the knees, but letting gravity. So this is one of the tricks to flexibility, actually. Let gravity assist you, and it's not all about brute force. You would think that would make you flexible faster, but it actually doesn't. Allowing the stretch to happen somehow gets us there faster. And it's because you don't have to be guarding or anything like that. You can completely relax and find the full range of motion. And then to come out, one last time, hugging the knees in. For Apanasana, maybe a little rock side to side. And then we're ready for Shavasana, final resting pose. So from here, if your back would like some extra support today, feel free to keep the knees bent with the feet on the floor, and then feet can step out, knees can tip in and relax. Otherwise, we extend the legs and the arms along your sides, palms facing up, and closing the eyes. Relaxing everything. But especially through the neck and the shoulders and all the way down the arms. Letting the fingers softly curl. Softening through the face. Softening around the eyes, and even the muscle between the eyes. Just letting it all go. And starting to come back. Wiggle the fingers and the toes, and gently roll your head from side to side. And reaching your arms above head on the floor for a big stretch, feeling totally refreshed. And then bending your knees in one at a time. Gently roll over to the right side. Pausing for just a moment. And slowly start to press yourself all the way up to a comfortable seated position, taking all the time you need to arrive. And when you do, palms facing up on the knees. Inhale, sitting up tall. And exhale. Softly close the eyes and just take those final moments to thank yourself for showing up to your practice today and taking care of you. And slowly open the eyes. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.